All right, let's jump straight into this explainer built specifically for your A-level Christianity revision. Today, we're diving into the fascinating intersection of migration, secularization, and the modern UK church. If you're studying social developments and religious thought, this is absolutely crucial stuff. We're going to break down some complex sociological trends and see exactly how global shifts are reshaping the religious landscape right here in Britain. Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The secularization thesis. 2. Defining reverse mission. 3. Pentecostal versus liturgical worship. 4. Challenges in secular Britain. And finally 5. The assimilation struggle. Now, I want you to keep this exact question in the back of your mind. Is the UK a modern mission field? For your exam, you need to be prepared to evaluate this. As we analyze the data and the arguments today, you'll need to synthesize these points to build a really strong, evidence-based argument for your essays. Section 1. The secularization thesis. Okay, so let's start with a crucial key term. The secularization thesis is basically the foundational problem driving our entire discussion today. A lot of sociologists and scholars of religion actually support the view that modern societies like Britain aren't just going through a temporary dip. Instead, they argue we're facing a long-term future of steady Christian decline. What's interesting is that sociologists don't just, guess that things are declining. They break it down into 3 distinct, highly measurable categories. We're looking at fewer people sitting in the pews on a Sunday, the church having way less influence over laws and public morality, and fundamentally a real drop in personal, private belief in Christian doctrines. To put this into perspective, just look at the demographic shift. It's honestly pretty stark. According to the Census for England and Wales, those checking the no religion box jumped from 15% in 2001 to 25% by 2011. That's in just a 10-year window. In that exact same period, those identifying with Christianity dropped from 72% down to 59%. Plus, Christianity currently has the oldest age profile of all religious groups in the UK. So the data paints a very specific, undeniable picture. So what does this actually look like on the ground? Well, think about the number 20. That represents the approximate amount of Church of England closures every single year. That's real physical evidence of the secularization thesis. We're not just talking about abstract statistics here. These are physical church buildings becoming available for lease or sale simply because the congregations just aren't there anymore. Section 2. Defining reverse mission. There's a fascinating historical irony at play here. Back in the 19th and 20th centuries, the UK was this absolute powerhouse of missionary work, sending Anglicans and Methodists all across the British Empire. But as the geographical center of Christianity shifted heavily down toward the Southern Hemisphere, places like Africa, Asia, and Latin America, the whole dynamic flipped. Now, in the 21st century, countries like Brazil, Korea, and particularly Nigeria are actually sending missionaries back here. And that brings us to our core concept, reverse mission. This is literally when countries that once sent missionaries become the targets for the very people they once evangelized. It's driven by this global perception that Britain has become highly secular, maybe even hostile to Christianity. And these global believers have a really strong desire to see the faith thrive here once again. But reverse mission isn't just one single monolithic thing. It actually takes a bunch of different active forms. It might look like a short-term visit from an African church group sharing vibrant music and dance. Or it might be dedicated church workers arriving with the explicit goal of evangelizing and converting a secular public. In other cases, it's traditional British churches intentionally appointing leaders from a migrant background, just trying to inject some much-needed energy into a struggling congregation. Section 3. Pentecostal versus liturgical worship. Right, so the largest influx of Christians coming to Britain right now are from Caribbean and West African countries, and they are overwhelmingly bringing Pentecostalism with them. This movement leans heavily on the powerful experiences of the early church, like what you read about in Acts chapter 2. It's highly experiential, with a massive focus on the miraculous gifts of the Spirit. And the growth here is absolutely explosive. 500,000, that's 500,000 Christians who now attend Black majority churches in the UK. To put that into perspective, just 60 years ago, that number was practically 0. Denominations like the Redeemed Christian Church of God, which was founded in Nigeria, now have almost 800 congregations in Britain alone. That vastly outnumbers indigenous Pentecostal bodies. Now, to really understand the culture clash going on, we have to contrast that with the liturgical approach. This represents the historical, traditional style of long-standing British denominations, like the Church of England or the Catholic Church. This style relies heavily on prescribed formal texts for communal prayer. When you put these side by side, the stylistic clash is literally night and day. On one hand, you've got exuberant singing, spontaneous prayer, faith healing, and dancing. On the other, you have a formal, literary reliance on written texts and a deep reverence for quiet, sacred spaces. As you can probably guess, merging these two incredibly different groups into one single congregation isn't nearly as easy as it sounds.
Section 4. Challenges in Secular Britain.
This quote from scholar Rebecca Caddo is great because it adds a very real and honestly slightly humorous human element to the severe cultural adjustments these missionaries face. Beyond just the theological pushback from a highly secularized public, they're dealing with the shock of a completely new climate and a new culture. It's a massive, multi-layered adjustment. Imagine moving continents to preach, and on top of everything, you have to deal with the freezing rain and, well, different food. Now, if you're looking for those top AO2 evaluation marks, here is your critical analytical takeaway. Despite their incredible vibrancy, their massive church plants, and their passionate efforts, the broad secular trend of the UK has not been reversed. A lot of these missionaries find the secular British resistance so tough that they end up shifting their focus purely to supporting their fellow nationals within migrant communities, rather than converting the wider secular population. And finally, Section 5, the assimilation struggle. So, why is assimilation so tough? Well, there are some major logistical and cultural roadblocks. First, language barriers severely complicate basic pastoral care. I mean, how do you counsel someone or teach a complex confirmation class if you aren't perfectly fluent in the same language? Second, we go right back to those vastly different worship styles. The deeper the religious sentiment, the harder it is to express in a foreign cultural context. Because of these barriers, a lot of migrant Christians simply form their own independent churches. There, they can find social support, get legal counseling for immigration, and just enjoy a familiar, comforting style of worship. I want to leave you with this final, provocative question to frame your exam essays. We've looked at the data on secularization, we've seen the incredible rise of Pentecostal reverse missions, and we've explored the steep cultural barriers to assimilation. So, synthesize everything we've covered today. Has reverse missions saved UK Christianity, or has it just created isolated migrant communities? Look at the evidence, weigh the arguments, and form your own evaluative conclusion. Good luck with your revision.